transition and in the addressing climate challenge. So my name is Michele Sansoni. I'm a project advisor in the Life Energy and Life Unit of CINEA, the executive agency of the European Commission dealing with climate, environment and infrastructure and organizing this conference. And as you might know, the new Clean Energy Transition Program under LIFE is the follow-up of Horizon 2020 Energy Efficiency, so is continuing funding market uptake activities. And if you have any questions on the LIFE program, and in particular on the LIFE Clean Energy Transition Program, we have a stand in the networking area, so you can go there and you will find colleagues who can support you and answer your questions. So today we have the pleasure to have with us Victoria Forstinger, from energy expert at Urban Innovation Vienna, who's the coordinator of Decarb City Pipes 2050, which is a very interesting project because it's dealing with transition roadmaps to energy efficient, zero carbon urban heating and cooling. So I think without further ado, I will give the floor to Victoria for her presentation.
Well, thank you very much for the kind introduction, and thank you very much for inviting us to present the project today. Should work now, perfect. Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Victoria Forstinger. I'm from Urban Innovation Vienna, the Climate and Innovation Agency of the City of Vienna. So I'm going to present about the Decarb City project today a bit. So let me just start off with two examples of our cities and taking a look back when the project took off or started, and even when it was intended. So back in 2020, Vienna started off with doing spatial energy planning, then 1.0 if you want. So Vienna, picture is a little bit messy, no, never mind. Here in yellow, you can see designated areas in Vienna in which gas boilers were prohibited in new buildings. So if you build a new area, you're not allowed to establish a new gas boiler in these districts. So this was is legally binding, and it was ordinated by the city of Vienna. So that was back in 2020. So if we take a look now at Winterthur, this year only, the Canton of Zurich, the cantonal energy law that was put in place in on September 1st now prohibits the use of fossil heating systems in all buildings. So Vienna is now in a very beneficial situation, but it has a law it can rely on that it's not allowed to install a fossil heating system in building, which also means new buildings and existing buildings. So if your gas or oil heater breaks down, you have to remove it and exchange it with a renewable system. And here you can see the heating map of Vienna, of Winterthur, which was created also as part of this project. And just to go quickly through it, it's basically designating areas for thermal networks and for individual heating solutions based on renewable energy sources. So what does this mean for the gas grid? This will potentially be decommissioned till the end of 2040, Winterthur's climate neutrality targets. So, okay, but now to the project. To give you just the picture, we have at the project, I've mentioned already 2 of our project cities partners taking part in this project. So we have in total 7 cities working in the course of this project with Bilbao, Dublin, Rotterdam, Winterthur, Munich, Vienna, and Bratislava. And as Michele also already said, it's those cities are all working towards transitioning their heating and cooling sector to their intended climate neutrality target. So just the basics, it's a Horizon 2020 project. It's a capacity building project for cities, so it's not a research project, and its duration is 3 years. And of course, we have a project website, which you're more than welcome to access. So aside from those 7 cities, we have, of course, other project partners also. Me, myself, being from UIV, acting as coordinator of this project. We have Energy Cities as our disseminator. We have 2 research institutions, Halmstad University and Utrecht University. And in support of Bilbao, we have Tignalia also as project partners. So, what is the goal of this project? It's to equip cities with the know-how and the capacity and the mandate to act to actually ensure and enable this transition to net zero, climate-friendly heating and cooling. It's to also address, of course, this hot potato of phasing out fossil fuels in the building sector, which, not surprisingly, at least for our cities, means no gas for space heating. I will go into detail a little bit later on that. And it's also intended to break this huge challenge that is now so important for the cities to achieve, to break this challenge down into manageable and concrete action steps. And of course, it's to showcase also that local authorities can succeed in this challenge. So it's a feat that's doable in our perspective. And of course, we want to spread the word. So again, thanks for the opportunity to speak today also. So those 7 cities are intended to showcase that this challenge is doable and to meet. So those 7 cities represent are quite different, of course. We have those cities differ in sizes. They were back in the beginning of the project at different stages of development, and they had different socio-technical characteristics. Of course, they also have differing climate neutrality targets. One has to say those targets also changed after the project was conceived. So you have Decarb City Pipes 2050, which would be the target, this transition of heating and cooling should be achieved. Some cities, however, want to do that earlier on. Best case example, Munich wants to do that by 2035. And yeah, and here a quick overview of the energy mix the cities now have. So just want to highlight a few numbers. So we have 2 cities present at the project who right now do not have a district heating network, that being Bilbao and Dublin. Of course, gas is in all cities or most of the cities a huge issue with Bilbao. Bilbao currently being dependent on gas for 85%. We have Rotterdam with 72% dependent on gas nowadays. And oil, on the other hand, is for most of the cities a rather minor issue, aside from Dublin and Winterthur, which are also have a high share of oil. And the cities also differ with regard to the utility settings. So some of those have city-owned utilities and DSOs, some of them have semi-owned utilities, some of them only rely on private utilities, so they also differ in that kind of regard. So what do the cities actually do in the course of this project? So if you want, we can name it the triple jump to readiness. So what does that mean in principle? So the outlook of the project, and I will go into detail a bit about each and every one of those issues a bit later. So at the starting of the project, cities first had to agree on a heating and cooling outlook. So they had to create a vision of how the heating and cooling supply and demand will look like in 2040. So that was at the beginning of the project. Then cities had to bring that all into space, develop spatial differentiated heating and cooling plans. And right now we're in the midst of formulating so-called transition roadmaps. Defining actions, policies, timelines, and responsibilities to be set so as to reach the transformation of the heating and cooling sector. So, and how do we work? So it's, as I say, local and international. Of course, it's an EU project, but nonetheless, it's very city-driven. So at the outset of the project, each and every single one of our cities had to create a local working group, that being a group of people from the municipality, from the energy utility, from housing corporations, from the DSO, the network operator. So bringing them all together in a local working group, bringing them on the table and try to come up with common solutions and goals. So it's getting all the relevant actors on the board and onto the course. So that was done at the outset of the project. And then, of course, we had this peer-to-peer learning and this capacity building learning between the cities and the local utilities and the DSOs on the progress and the lessons learned. So given the fact that the project started in 2020, so in the beginning of the COVID pandemic, of course, most of those settings had to be done online. So it was 2 years of project only meeting online. I think we have a very good project setting nonetheless. So it's very good to work with all the partners present, but yeah, it was online. It's been done online so far. And we have an advisory board. So we have 7 experts in the fields of energy on our advisory board, and they also help those cities developing their plans. And we have the Energy Cities Network to disseminate and to replicate. So, but let's deep dive into what does this heating and cooling outlook mean. Just a minor note, why the cooling is in brackets. So for most of the cities, cooling is, as I say, a minor issue. It's going to rise in its, it's going to become more and more important though, but nonetheless, most of the cities, given their geographic situation, focused on heating. But let's start with the heating and cooling outlook is the foundation for further planning steps. So it was the first step cities had to do in the project, set a common goal. And that's, in principle, cities had to agree in the local working groups with all the relevant stakeholders present on what the energy system or the heating and cooling system is going to look like at the intended climate neutrality target. So it's in principle deciding on the quantitative structure and the energy carriers to be used. So cities had to agree on CO2 reduction pathways, for example, on renovation rates, on the reduction of the heat demand, of course, which is a very important issue for cities, on heating system exchange scenarios, and of course, cities also had to decide on what energy carriers at all to integrate into the system. So what role, if any, for green gas in the heating and cooling sector. So that was first to be done in the project. So, and to give you a quick example of Vienna, so how did Vienna deal with that issue? So we have the pathway for the greenhouse gas emissions in the building and heating sector till 2040 for the case of Vienna. So right now, the GHG emissions account for about 30% of the building sector accounts for 30% GHG emissions of Vienna. So, and those emissions will need to be with net zero at 2040. So we have this blackish line first, and then the expected pathway towards zero at the end. And if you think back on the energy mix of Vienna, so we have about 42% gas right now and about 40% of district heating and a minor role of oil and coal for Vienna. But of course, this gas is going to go down or needs to go down till zero by 2040. And what Vienna also did was develop a spatial principle. So deciding on how will our energy system look like in 2040. And they came up with that picture, which in principle states, so right now, Vienna, so if this bubble is Vienna, actually looks a little bit like that. So we have about 1,200 kilometers of district heating already in place. So that covers about 50% of the cities, and our gas system currently covers 90% of the city. So in 2040, the energy system will look like that we have the central DH network, the red dot, And so the primary network and the secondary network, the smaller red dots. Then we have local DH networks, so microgrids in principle. And then the blue field around, which would currently be orange, since it's mainly covered with gas. This blue area will then be fueled by decentralized systems like heat pumps, biomass, even though biomass will only play a rather minor role. And then, of course, we have the remaining gas consumers connected to what will then be the green gas grid. So, but Vienna has made it abundantly clear already that it will not use green gas for spatial heating. So they will, given that we will not have enough green gas in 2040, the city intends for a prioritization, like producing electricity with it, or using it in the industry, or for the generation of district heating in case of peak demand and low energy renewable energy production, but we will not use it in the current gas network system. So yeah, that brings me to the heating and cooling plans. So first, of course, so if you want to pronounce it like questions, first the cities had to decide on the what, and now they had to decide on the where. So it's bringing this quantitative outlook to a spatial level. And cities developed and agreed in the local working group on spatially differentiated HC plans. So cities took a look at the heat density, the current system, energy availability, the building stock, cost calculation, and tried to come up with answers to the following questions. So where to establish this district heating, how to unbundle the gas and DH grids, and et cetera, et cetera. So on the right-hand side, you have an example of how such an heating plan could look like, example of Munich. So I know you cannot read the legend, nonetheless, the red areas are primarily the district heating areas, and the lighter colored areas, they are for singular solutions like heat pumps mainly. So how did cities get to this heating and cooling plan? So again, the case of Vienna, I'm sorry, I'm from Vienna, so that's why I'm bringing this example quite often. So Vienna tried to get to this heating and cooling plan on a twofold approach. So first, in order to understand the building stock in Vienna a little bit better, they tried to come up with so-called decarbonization types. So here you have the case MFH is standing for multi-family homes, and so larger buildings in principle. For each building type, the building condition was decided for refurbished, new, or unrefurbished. So it's only a binary decision to be made. So then we have the building period next, the heat supply system, whether it's decentralized or central. Here we only see the decentralized version. And it was done, as I said, for each building type. The decision had to be made on the energy carrier, like is it gas, is it district heating, whatever. And then, of course, do they still cook with gas? So on the right side, there are the numbers of buildings currently. There are the numbers of buildings here, but what's the main outcome of this chart was, so we have 9 decarbonization types, and we have, and that's the important issue, that doesn't work like that, never mind. So we have the largest part of building stock in Vienna are multi-family buildings with a decentralized heating system, and it's which is primarily gas fueled. So we have those individual gas heating boilers in cities, and we have about 430,000 of those in Vienna. So this decarbonization type, these units are quite hard to decarbonize actually, and because each unit needs its individual gas boiler to be replaced. So we know about the building structure. You now should see a map of Vienna. You cannot see the most important parts, which is being the district heating network, how it should look like in 2040, which is a bit of a shame. But nonetheless, so we on the one hand now have information on the building types. So we know how many buildings do have which kind of decarbonization types. And of course, then we also know what technical solutions to apply for which decarbonization type, and also the costs. I mean, if you know what measures to be set in such a decarbonization types, you know in total also roughly about the costs which it will take to transform those buildings. So, and on the other hand, the city of Vienna also combines such criteria like heat demand, district heating pipe density and building density, and try to come up with areas in which district heating will be extended or densified, and it tried to come up also with areas in which we will have single single solutions present. So it's this green area will then mainly be covered by heat pumps, and yeah. On the button, you should see again that Vienna really needs green gas, not for the space heating. It's quite important for Vienna. So the heating and cooling plan of Rotterdam, taking a look at the time, I don't think. Okay, that's a shame. Rotterdam has a heating and cooling plan, promise. Looks quite good. I think this next, okay, the next slide works. Okay, no, okay, I'm going to quickly explain. There's going to be lots of red and lots of gray there as well, because the primary solution for Rotterdam, as also for Vienna, is district heating and heat pumps. So it's a common energy carrier with district heating, and we have the single solution where the heat density is not that high. But the important issue is that Rotterdam approached the heating and cooling plan based on cost calculations. So the red marked area, which you cannot see right now, are designated areas where district heating is the most affordable alternative to natural gas at the lowest total cost. So Rotterdam differentiated between the what map, like where to do what, and it also came up with a when map. So it has this district-oriented approach. It defined 14 different districts where to start off with transforming or getting rid of gas in principle, transforming the heating and cooling sector. So here you can see, though quite vaguely, the 14 districts in which they will start off first. Yeah, it's perhaps important to note still that those heating plans are not static, but dynamic. Of course, they can change over time. So they can, adjustments can be made all the time. I mean, data inputs, they vary, they can vary, they can become better. And of course, there's also this underlying validation process of data. So data in principle is very, very relevant for the cities in order to come up with those heating and cooling plans. So, but of course, it also needs to be validated. So, and another minor detail I forgot to mention in Rotterdam is I said for Rotterdam, they prioritize district heating, and yeah, since they have lots of ambient heat, residual heat, also from the harbor especially, they focus on extending this district heating network. So that's why it's a shame you cannot see the map, because it's quite red. But given that it will be quite hard to make the electricity demand supplied 100% with renewables, they try to use as less heat pumps as possible. And they also have a quite, I think, very good approach towards how to deal with green gas. So they say it's going to be limited, it's going to be expensive. And since we do this heating and cooling plan based on cost calculation, it's not going to be that big of an issue in Rotterdam. So next up, if you remember the triple jump to readiness, cities are now working on the transition roadmaps. So what is that? Cities now develop so-called action plans. So what do we do? What measures to set? What actions to do in order to reach this energy efficient, zero carbon local heating and cooling no later than 2050 or earlier? So they are now thinking of what regulatories do we need to change? What legal requirements would still need to be set? What is the financial? What are the financial issues behind it? What governance structures do we need? New ones? Do we need to change the existing ones? What actions do we need to set? And who's doing what? So spelling out clear responsibilities. So again, the phase out of Vienna, and this is just the punctual what the cities are currently now dealing with. So I said before, Vienna needs to phase out about 500 units of gas boilers. So it needs to remove gas boilers from more than 500,000 units. So what does it mean for annual replacement rates? So we expect to have a ramp up till 2030, but in principle, on 2030 onwards, we will need to remove about 30,000 gas boilers per year so as to achieve the climate neutrality target of 2040. So it's quite an issue, a big feat. So 50% of those 500,000 units will be connected to the district heating network. 50% will have then heat pumps in the building. One needs to say that if you do a heat pump in your building, especially if it is an existing building, it's quite a feat, it's quite a challenge, and it's also quite expensive. And it needs lots of laborers to do that. So about the additional investments required, so we have some studies have been done, of course, also on that for Vienna. So it would require, according to the business as usual scenario, it would require about 2% of Vienna's GDP, additional investments required. So I just have it here also for power. This is 1.3 billion euros required. The thing for mobility as well, so for charging station and refueling infrastructure. But the largest part of additional investments required is for heating and for transforming our heating and cooling sector, which is about 18.6 billions of euros, and it's a quite conservative number, which is, I mean, costs are rising, so this number is only expected to rise accordingly also. So, and largest part of this block is for thermal refurbishment. Of course, we not only need the electrical refurbishment, so the exchange of the heating system, but we also need to bring down our energy consumption in total, which also heavily requires thermal refurbishments. So I'm not sure about the time. Michele, I'm looking at you a bit. Is okay? Okay. 5 minutes, perfect. Well, cities now, in the course of coming up with this transition roadmap, cities now also think on what from the legal side, from the federal level, what legal requirements do they want in order to help them transform the heating and cooling system. I mentioned Winterthur earlier. They have, if you want, perfect legal conditions already, because all fossil heating systems are prohibited already, either for new buildings and existing buildings. This is not the case for most of the cities right now. So we have some cities where oil is prohibited in existing buildings, but it's quite an issue for gas. And cities, on the one hand, now think of what to wish for from their national levels, because cities most of the time also lack, of course, the competences to set laws and for this. But and we also try to come up in this project to formulate recommendation for legislative framework to be ensured by the EU. So I brought a few points with me today. So first and foremost, as I said, there's this ongoing debate about renewable gas. It has created a certain level of, or considerable level of uncertainty. So cities, lots of cities are quite uncertain on why do we need to pay or why do we need to invest so much into transforming our energy system? We have the current gas grid, why not use it? with the green gas now. So why do we need to substitute this fossil gas with renewable? Oh, no, sorry. Substituting fossil gas with renewable gas is often lauded as the simple solution, which in principle is not, because I stated it for Rotterdam already. There will most probably not be enough green gas at the climate neutrality target, and it will still be expensive. So nonetheless, there's still this, some cities have a clear understanding of what to do with the remaining green gas. So they came up with this prioritization and decided not to use it for space heating, but some other cities are still vague on how to deal with this issue. So our proposal would be a European green gas strategy, putting forward requirements where this limited amount of green gas shall and shall not be used. Then we would strongly urge for legal technology clarity. I mean, there is this huge investments needed right now. So, and for all those people who are now in front of this challenge of what to do with their heating system once it breaks down. So should they go for another gas boiler, or should they wait? What should they do? So it would help them a lot and give them clarity if they know what technologies will actually be allowed in 2040, 2050, and so forth. Well, silo thinking is no longer since this feat is quite big, this challenge is quite big, we don't need silo thinking. We would strongly urge for integrated planning of energy infrastructure. So thinking in combination, no silo thinking. And there's also this issue on how to deal with this phase out of gas networks, and we would encourage the EU, in our perspective, should encourage rather than hinder the regulation for a clear phase out of gas distribution networks, because there's this huge issue. If you replace gas boiler from the grid, the network tariffs for the remaining customers, of course, will rise. So it's what to do with this costs then. And of course, and I've stated it for most of the cities and the project already, they focus on the promotion of district heating and heat pumps. Yeah, it would be great if the EU further supports and even stronger supports those two solutions at the municipality level. So I think that would be it from my side. Thanks for your attention, and there's answers I can answer, questions I can answer, then I'm more than welcome to do so. Thank you.